All right, hopefully then we are ready to go. Most of you know who I am, but my name is Chuck Ogg, and I'm with the Rock County Progressives. And um, if I could ask folks to maybe mute their mics while I and the speaker are talking, that would be great, so we don't get a lot of extraneous noise. It's distracting, appreciated. The Rock County Progressives are an organization whose mission is to promote activism and education here in Rock County. We are nonpartisan, although we do at times have politicians come. That's all part of the educational process. We're educating them as well as them us. And we've been going for, God, over 10 years, mostly meeting down at the co-op, or I should say the community room, because that's how they like it to be referred to, in the same building as the co-op. And we hope to go back to meeting in person some point in the near future, but I guess we'll see. In the meantime, we are doing these Zoom meetings, and they happen every month, second Wednesday of the month. And if you're not already on our email list, let me know and we'll put you on that list. So let me introduce my speaker. Tonight we have Carlene, and she is a retired public educator, mostly middle school teacher, who came to the movement to end partisan gerrymandering after testifying in multiple budget cycles before the state legislature's Joint Finance Committee and feeling she wasn't being heard. Surprise, surprise. She is part of the Oregon Progressives and helped organize the Fair Maps for Wisconsin Summit in Marshfield in November of 2019. And at that point, they hired her to help organize grassroots activists here around the state. And she's originally from North Carolina and has lived most of her adult life in Wisconsin. So this is usually the point at which I say, everyone give our speaker a big hand. Yay, welcome. And take it away, Carlene.
Right, nice shirt, Ida. Great shirt. Love that. I have one like that. Actually, I have several like that. Thanks for that introduction, Chuck. And I'm going to start by saying that that summit that was happened in November 2019 was sponsored by the Oregon Area Progressives, which I'm a member of and have been for quite some time. We got our start in 2005 after the Kerry election. Because we just felt like we had to do something and we might as well get together with the other people who had worked on that election and do some stuff together. So as Chuck said, I was hired after the summit to work with organizing grassroots activism around the state. Mark and I have worked together on several different things. He's part of the Southeast Wisconsin Fair Maps team representing Eastern Rock County. And I still live up here in the Oregon area. I don't live in the township anymore now. I live in the village for about a year. I've been living in the village. So I'm going to share my screen and basically try to bring everybody up to date on where we've been and where we are, where we're hoping things will go. So I call this the Maps Mess in Wisconsin. A friend of mine said to me the other day, so what are we doing? Are we just mopping up the mess? And it's like, yeah, that's basically what we're doing. We're mopping up the mess. We're trying to make the best of a bad situation. I am part of the Fair Maps Coalition. These organizations are part of the lead team of the coalition. There are about 40 nonprofit organizations, including grassroots organizations like OAP. I'm sure that if Rock County Progressives wanted to be a part of the coalition, you certainly could. This group meets twice monthly to kind of guide the work and set course for how we will be proactive and reactive to the things that are happening around redistricting. So I go through this every time so everybody has a clear understanding of what we're talking about when it comes to redistricting. So if these wards in Wisconsin needed to be divided into 5 districts, there would be 10 wards in each district. Proportional representation would mean that folks were represented in proportion to their representation in the among the voters. So the ones on the left, these districts on the left are not very compact. They're not very convenient, but they are proportional. The yellows get 3, the greens get 2, and the ones on the right are more compact, more convenient, and also proportionate. Gerrymandering happens when representation is disproportionate. So in these very compact, very convenient districts, these rectangles, the yellows get everything. And the ones on the right look a lot more like Wisconsin, where the lines are drawn in very convoluted ways for one party to gain over the other. And we know that Wisconsin is a very closely divided state, and so our electorate should be reflected in a very closely divided state assembly and senate, but it's not. So the way that happens is through cracking and packing. And I just realized that I forgot what I shared to turn on my sound. This is one of those things that I often forget to do. So I'm turning on the sound so that I can show you this short video that if you haven't seen before is very good. And if you can't hear it, I'll make sure the closed caption is on, but it's pretty self-explanatory when you watch it. So even if you can't hear it, please bear with it. And unfortunately, it takes just a second for this to come up.
Partisan redistricting, or gerrymandering, is about fractions, percentages. These coins represent voters in an evenly divided state, 50 dimes, 50 pennies. They elect representatives. That means each district map must contain 10 coins. Of course, real people don't live in neat rows, so let's mix them up. This is our hypothetical state. Let's see what happens if the dimes draw the maps. 10 coins in each district.
So first thing we do is pack the pennies. Give them 2 safe districts, but pack them solid. The remaining 8 districts are won by the dimes, by smaller but still comfortable margins. The dimes win 8 districts and the pennies win 2. The dimes overwhelmingly control the legislature.
Of course, if the pennies drew the district lines, the opposite could happen. Let's rig it for the pennies.
For the pennies, we pack the dimes into 2 safe districts and crack the remaining 8 districts and win by the same margin, 8-2.
Well, now that we've destroyed democracy, let's consider how this would look if the maps were drawn based on compactness and keeping communities of interest together. You get evenly divided districts in an evenly divided state. There are some that go heavily dime, there are some that go penny, but that's to be expected. People live where they live, and that's what democracy is about. It's not about party bosses rigging elections for them.
I will send this to you so that you can see it yourself. And let me just make sure. I got to move. Come on, move. Where you appear. I'll send this to you so that you can see it on your own, and all these links will be live. So what happens when things are so gerrymandered is that everybody's vote is virtually worthless. If you are in a packed district, your vote is wasted. If you are in a gerrymandered district where you are In the cracked portion, your vote is worthless because it's really hard to impact the overall election. And it also makes primaries much more important because that's where the real decisions end up being made. And we know that fewer voters turn out for primaries, and the people who turn out for primaries tend to be more partisan. So it pushes both parties to the extremes, and it makes things hyper partisan. It also gives one party more power than the other, and it makes all legislators basically unaccountable. If you control everything and you can't be unelected, you become unaccountable. And if you can't control anything, you become unaccountable because nothing you do will matter. This has a history. In 1964, the Supreme Court of the United States ruled in a case of Reynolds versus Sims that population size in legislative districts had to be relatively equal. So before that, you could have an urban district with several thousand people and a rural district with several hundred. But after this ruling, things had to be equalized, and they try to keep it within 1% population deviation between districts. The Wisconsin Constitution requires, the yellow is what's actually in the Constitution, requires the integrity of political subdivisions. In other words, not dividing up municipalities or county supervisory districts. We know some counties have to be divided, but supervisory districts should be kept together. Maintaining communities of interest, which are folks who have shared interests. That's not just a racial or ethnic interest group. And keeping people geographically compact. So in other words, not long, skinny districts or convoluted districts. And that each state Senate district should have 3 assembly districts within it. So the census became really important in 1964 for redistricting. The redistricting cycle after that ruling in 1971 was the last time that the Wisconsin State Legislature has cooperated on creating maps. And thank you to Mark for this illustration. That's when Lou Alcindor and Oscar Robertson played for the Milwaukee Bucks. Now, Lou Alcindor has since changed his name to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and neither of them play basketball anymore. I was actually in middle school at the time. 81, 91, 2001 saw divided government in our state, and the maps ended up going to federal court judges to decide how they would be drawn. And then came 2010. But it's not that simple, because in 2009, there was nonpartisan redistricting legislation proposed. Jeff Smith, who was in the assembly at the time, he was head of the elections committee. He held hearings on the 2 proposals that were brought before the state legislature. He tried to get his Democratic colleagues to pass the legislation. They had the trifecta. They had both chambers of the state legislature, and Jim Doyle was governor. But they looked at that 2008 map and they said, we're not doing that. We are going to get to draw the maps. And so they did not pass the legislation. They did not count on the Tea Party town hall summer, the death panels for grandma shouting from, all around. I personally was involved, and I think Mark was too, in training folks to go to those town halls and ask questions in a way that would help legislators be able to answer about the ACA in a way that let them really talk about what was happening. But that whole sentiment of that summer was very, well, you remember it, the Democrats lost in state legislatures across the country and lost big in the House. So that is the election when Ron Johnson was elected, and Scott Walker, and also Republicans narrowly took both chambers of the state legislature. And they very, very quickly got to business. While many of us were marching around the Capitol in protest of Act 10, remember, I'm a retired public educator and I live close to Madison, so I was there all the time. They were across the street in the offices of Michael Best and Friedrich, creating these maps with very sophisticated software and consultants who created maps that would give them a 54 seats in the state assembly, no matter how high the Democratic turnout was. Well, they actually ended up getting more than that. But they passed these through really quickly because that's the time of all the recall elections. And so they got these passed before the recalls. But when we look at the history of our state in terms of Supreme Court elections, which are supposed to be nonpartisan, but we know political parties back one candidate or the other in every election cycle for the Supreme Court, we can see that voters don't necessarily vote along a strict party line. It goes back and forth. We are a very, very purple state, and we are becoming more purple. These are the last two Supreme Court elections, and we know how narrowly we first that in 2016 that Democrats lost, and in 2020 that Democrats won. So it's the voters in our state are not necessarily strictly along partisan lines. And when they're polled, they say, we want a nonpartisan process. In 2019, 72% of voters, including 60% of Republicans, wanted a nonpartisan process. And then in 2020, 70%, and this is about 3 weeks before the COVID shutdown. So the Marquette Law School has not done another poll since then on this issue. And I've asked somebody who knows Charles Franklin if they can kind of nudge him to do another one, because I would be really curious to know how folks are feeling about redistricting now that we're in the redistricting year. The reality here in Wisconsin is that the Constitution makes the legislature responsible for the maps. It does not say they should draw them. And in fact, they haven't drawn them for several cycles. The governor signs the maps into law or vetoes them. We don't have a ballot initiative here like they do in Michigan and other states. So in order to change the Constitution, any kind of legislation would have to pass 3 consecutive sessions of the state legislature before it goes to voters for an up or down vote. What we do have is advisory resolutions, which are passed by county boards and city councils, and advisory referendums, which are passed by voters. And Rock County, Mark was very instrumental in getting the Rock County referendum passed in November. I think it was like 76% or 86%. Well, I have it on the slide. And we have public education and support. So making the case in the court of public opinion for this is what we want. So our goal in this movement is to get maps this year through a transparent process with public input that respects communities of interest and reflects the statewide electorate. We're doing that work in 3 buckets. There is the legal strategy, which is headed by Law Forward. It's a nonprofit law firm, progressive law firm that formed about 8 months ago. Doug Poland, Jeff Mandel, and Mel Barnes are taking the lead on that, and they are preparing for eventual litigation on maps. They're also very involved in voting rights issues. So these voter suppression laws that are before the state assembly right now and state senate are definitely on their radar, and they have filed some petitions in those cases. They also filed an amicus brief on on behalf of the Wisconsin Democracy Campaign in support of MTI, which is my teachers union, in the suit against Robin Voss and Devin LeMahieu about the attorneys that they had hired using taxpayer dollars about litigation and maps that don't even exist yet. Then there's the nonprofit good government groups that have redistricting as core to their mission, like the Democracy Campaign, the Fair Elections Project, the Legal Women Voters, Common Cause, and others, that list at the beginning. And then there's the grassroots activism. So I kind of coordinate that and try to make sure that folks know what's going on with the People's Maps Commission, doing voter education and all kinds of public events. We have one coming up on Monday, spreading the word through social media, writing letters to the editor, getting articles in the paper, just making sure that there is a bright light shined on this all the time, that it does not go off of people's radar, and that folks understand that the issues that we care about, be it public education or Medicaid expansion or anything else, is directly linked to whether we have fair representation and in the state legislature. So over the last, since 2014, there have been 32 advisory referendums passed by voters in counties. It took 5 years to get 8 of them done. And then in the last year, we passed 24 more just in 1 year. So you know that the momentum is building around this. And Rock County passed theirs last April. Sorry, I said November. Last April by almost 81% voters in Rock County passed that. The first one was passed in Dane County back in 2014 by 82%. And I apologize that I didn't highlight Rock County. I presented to Portage County last night, and so I didn't update my slide, and I apologize for that. Rusk County is the county that had passed it by the least amount. This was in November, at the same time as Rusk County went 70% for Donald Trump. So you can see that people had to cross party lines to vote for this. This is not a Democratic issue. This is a very much nonpartisan issue. There have also been multiple municipalities that have passed this, and these are in counties where the county board has refused to put the referendum onto the ballot. That's not particularly true for the city of Appleton. Outagamie and Winnebago counties have both passed the referendum, but Calumet has not. And Appleton is in all 3 of those counties. So this just happened in November, and the folks who live in the city of Appleton wanted to pressure the county board in Calumet County to also pass the referendum. So they decided to start with Appleton. There's also a lot going on the legal front. You may know that the Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty and Scott Jensen, who is the former Republican Speaker of the State Assembly, disbarred Speaker of the State Assembly. He was involved in that Chuck Chvala, Democrat, Scott Jensen, Republican, pay for play budget stuff. You might remember that maybe 15 years ago. Neither one of them can hold public office anymore, but that does not keep him from trying to manipulate what is happening with representation in our state. So he joined with Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty and asked the state Supreme Court to change the rules for how redistricting cases are heard and make themselves, the Supreme Court, the court of original jurisdiction, meaning that any lawsuit that is brought about redistricted maps would skip all of the lower courts and go directly to the state Supreme Court, and they would be the court to hear it. Well, what that does is it cuts out input and fact finding from us, the people of Wisconsin, and it puts it in the hands of the Supreme Court justices. And I've learned a lot about how courts work. I can't claim to even be anywhere close to knowing much about the law, but apparently, you know, they hear arguments and then they do their own research, but they don't have fact finding. They don't cross-examine anybody except the people who present to them, which would have meant that only the Democrats and the Republicans and perhaps the parties and perhaps the governor would be able to present to the court. So there wouldn't be anybody else who could talk about the impacts of these maps or anything else in suit. So they brought the rules change petition. The court set a date for a hearing on it the day after the election. And they gave a 3-week window ending on the Monday after Thanksgiving for people to get comments in. Well, we managed to muster up enough people to get 1,900 comments in from people, not to say the maps are bad, we knew that, but to say don't change this process. we don't want to be cut out of it. So we had to do a lot of education around that. Um, and then they held a hearing on January 14th. About 25 of us testified. There were legal scholars and other folks, but there were 25 regular people who turned out to talk to the Supreme Court. We have not gotten a decision on that yet. And the people at Law Forward say that's a good thing. The longer it takes for them to make a decision on this, the less likely it is that they will make themselves the court of original jurisdiction. And the other thing that's kind of ironic about this foreshortened timeline is that back in 2003, they were asked to become the court of original jurisdiction, and they took 6 years, 6 years to study the question. They sent it to committee. They met with scholars, legal scholars, redistricting scholars, all of these folks. And after the end of those 6 years in 2009, they said, no, we don't want to do this. This is a bad idea. It would make us too partisan. And so we really leaned into that argument that they made about why they shouldn't change it back in 2009 and said, what's changed? You shouldn't change it now. Things are more partisan than ever. You need to save your reputation, whatever it is, that you are a nonpartisan body. So as I said, we're still waiting for that decision. There was a decision, however, last week, end of the week before last, in the case that I mentioned before, where Robin Voss and Devin LeMahieu had hired 2 law firms, one in Washington, D.C. and one in Madison, at taxpayer expense, ahead of any kind of litigation or any maps being drawn. And so a Dane County Circuit Court judge, Stephen Elke, voided those contracts and said, you can't do this. You can't spend taxpayer dollars on this. That is, of course, being appealed, but we expect that will stand. And then the governor has asked for nonpartisan redistricting. In 2019, he included nonpartisan redistricting in his budget. It was stripped out by the Joint Finance Committee. So then in 2020, as part of his State of the State address, he issued an executive order, which he signed the next week, creating the People's Maps Commission. There was a process put in place for creating this commission. People had to apply. They had to meet certain criteria. They couldn't hold public office. They couldn't be lobbyists. They couldn't be officers in any political party. They had to be eligible to vote. There were several other criteria. Plus, he said there should be 1 African American, 1 Latinx, and 1 Native American on the commission. And the people applied. They wrote essays, etc. Had to have lots of stuff notarized. Once those were vetted, the people who met all the criteria were sent to a panel of 3 circuit court judges, retired circuit court judges, and those folks chose these 9 people. It was already decided there would be 9, and they determined to have 2 from the 4th congressional district. Every other congressional district has 1 representative, and these folks began meeting in the end of summer last year, in late August, early September. They started holding hearings October 1st, and they held hearings in each congressional district through March 11th. Each hearing had a theme, and they heard from redistricting experts who they then questioned about a lot of things. So they heard about they heard from Keith Gaddy and Ken Mayer, the 2 professors, one from Oklahoma and one from UW-Madison, who had advised the parties in the 2011 redistricting. They heard from the Brennan Center about different models of redistricting, about the Voting Rights Act, from attorneys. They heard from a variety from local government people about the impacts of these maps on local government, etc. So, and then they also heard from regular people from each of the congressional districts about how these maps have impacted them, have impacted their communities, what the maps have meant to them. And those are all available to watch on YouTube. If you're geeky like me, you even go back and watch some of them. The first half is those experts, then they take a break, and the second half is local folks. They're about 2.5 to 3 hours long, but you know, if you want to learn more, it's a great way to do it. And they're also still taking written comment. And as I said, I'll share these slides. These links are both live, and so you can click on them and go to those places. Right now, they are in the process of collecting community maps. And what that means is they're asking folks like us to create maps of our community, the community that we have shared interests with, that should not be broken up by the way the district lines are drawn. And so they're using software called Districtor and working with a mathematician named Moon Duchin out of Tufts University. This is free and easily accessible software that you can use online. You don't have to download anything onto your computer. And you literally go in and create a shaded map that shows the points of interest, and give a qualitative description of what your community is and why it should be kept together, and the impacts of breaking it apart, etc. So, like, I live in the village of Oregon. My village prior to 2011 was not divided. The whole village, all at the time 11 wards, now 13 wards, were all in the same district, all in the same assembly district, all in the same Senate district. Now the village is divided between 2 assembly districts and 2 Senate districts. So I live in one of the 5 wards that is in Don Bruink's assembly district and Janice Ringhand's Senate district. The rest of the village is in Sandy Pope's assembly district and John Erpenbach's Senate district. Our school district is in 3 assembly districts and 3 Senate districts. It just doesn't make sense. And there's not any good reason for it except cracking off the little portion of the village that I live in and putting it in with some different, some more conservative parts of the state to the east. So I encourage you to do this. The software, you can draw districts or you can draw your community, and they're using the 2020 American Community Survey data for this. And then when the census data comes in later at the block level, they will be able to look at how the numbers play out as far as the numbers in the census, and be able to tweak lines to get to that population balance. So this is something I strongly encourage folks to take part in. I'm just going to skip really quickly through that one. This is where you can register if like there's a training tonight. They do trainings on Wednesday nights and they do study halls on Thursdays. And you can go in there and, learn about it and then get with, or on your own, or get with other folks to create a map that represents your community of interest. And I would strongly suggest that maybe that's something your group might want to try doing. So what's likely to happen next? The Supreme Court at some point, and we think probably this month, will come back with a decision on that Jensen Will rules change. Nonpartisan redistricting legislation is going to be introduced later this month, and I'll talk to you in just a minute about the rally we're hosting on Monday to announce the rollout of that legislation. It won't actually have a number or anything yet because we're still trying to get Republican co-sponsors, because we do strongly believe that this is a nonpartisan issue. It hurts everyone. The People's Maps Commission is gathering community maps. The census numbers we're hearing are going to come back mid-August, probably August 16th. We expect that the Republican-controlled state legislature is going to make maps a lot the same way they did before. Robin Voss has made it very clear that he's not the least bit interested in the People's Maps Commission's maps, but they are going to create maps, and they are creating those maps. As I said, they got a lot of public input before in testimony and expert guidance, and now they're asking people to make maps, and those will be available to present to the legislature. They probably won't take them up, but they could. The governor is very likely to veto the maps that are drawn by the state legislature, and they will go to court. That is another reason why it's really important to participate with the People's Maps Commission process, because it's important that there's the state legislature's maps. I gotta get my thumb on the right side. State legislature's maps, and there is will be the People's Maps Commission maps. These will be vetoed. They'll go to court, and the courts will have these maps to compare, and they'll be able to say there's lots of different ways now with all kinds of technology to measure how gerrymandered a state is, how gerrymandered a district is. Wisconsin is one of the most gerrymandered in the country by the measures of the efficiency gap. And I don't really want to go, that's a mathematician hole I don't want to go down, but just suffice it to say that by the folks that measure these things, our maps are terrible. So this is what's likely to happen next on a timeline. The important thing to know is that district maps really do need to be drawn by April of 2022, because that's when candidates for the state legislature and for Congress and Senate have to, well, not Senate because it's statewide, but for Congress, need to know where the districts are, because April 15th is when they declare, they get their papers to get nomination signatures. Now that date could be moved by the courts. It's not constitutional, that date of April 15th, but it does have precedent. So on Monday, next Monday, the 17th, we are sponsoring a rally for fair maps at the state capitol. Jeff Smith, who I mentioned before, was a representative in 2009. He was gerrymandered out of that district. And then he went to work for Citizen Action as an organizer. He lobbied during the years that he was not in the state legislature for nonpartisan redistricting. He has since been elected to the state Senate in Senate District 31, which is the district that Kathleen Vinehout held until she ran for governor, and she did not run for her seat again. Jeff ran for that seat and won. Deb Andraka actually flipped a district, the 23rd Assembly District, and she ran on this issue, nonpartisan redistricting. So she ran in a really gerrymandered district and won election, and she is introducing the legislation in the state assembly. Sachin Chetta will be speaking. He's from the Fair Elections Project. Matt Rothschild from Wisconsin Democracy Campaign, Deborah Crummiller from the League of Women Voters, Kristen Bray, if you've seen any of the short videos from As Goes Wisconsin, she's very funny. She's going to be the MC, and then also speaking will be Devin Anderson from the African American Roundtable, and retired Republican State Senator Dan Thino from the Green Bay area. It's at noon, it's outdoors, socially distanced, rain or shine. So we hope that you'll come up to Madison on Monday and take part in that rally. There's also HR 1S1 has provisions in it to ban partisan gerrymandering at the congressional district level. And it also calls for the establishment of independent commissions with clear standards. So even though we know Ron Johnson has said he's going to vote against it, it's important to add to his tally, make sure that the tally marks for S1 outnumber the tally marks against it, and also to help bolster Tammy Baldwin in her efforts to stand up for this. You can volunteer with the Southeast Wisconsin Fair Maps team. Can start one of your own that's just Rock County. You can talk to Mark about that. He's very involved with the Fair Maps team down there. Also the League of Women Voters. This has been the League of Women Voters and the American Association of University Women nationally have made nonpartisan redistricting one of their top policy priorities, and they're doing a lot of work around that. Create a community map. Get together with one another and, make a map of what you feel are the communities in Rock County that should not be split up. Should Rock County as a whole be part of one district instead of 3 districts as it is now? and submit your comments to the People's Maps Commission. You can follow us on Facebook and donate to the cause. This is our website. This is Sachin Chadha. And if you take a look at that map, let me not knock these down. And this map, you can see that it's much, this one is much more purple than that one was. So a lot has changed since this whole process started, and the momentum is definitely in favor. People across the political spectrum want a nonpartisan process. And thanks to Mark for this. The ultimate hidden truth of the world is that it is something that we can make and could just as easily make differently. I'll stop my share and I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, well, thank you so much, Carlene. That was very informative. This is the time for people to ask questions, but I just wondered if Mark wanted to jump in and say a little bit about what's been going on locally. Do you want to do that, Mark? You out there?
Yeah. Hi, Chuck.
Hey,
Thank you.
Mark. Sure.
The Southeast team consists of 4 counties so far, and what we're going to be focusing on, sorry about the echo. What we'll be focusing on are contacting legislators and also drawing maps. And I'd like to just emphasize that being able to work with that software is very easy. So, I mean, you can just go ahead and try one out. I mean, in a couple of minutes, I did something for the 4th and 5th wards in Janesville with the food deserts, just to see what it would look like if there were going to be a natural community there. It's very easy to use. So I'm hoping that there'll be more conversations about communities of interest here in Rock County, because I think we do have divided issues that could be addressed.
Mark, you're cutting in and out. You might want to turn your video,
Video
off
off?
so we can
Okay.
hear you.
Yeah. Thanks, Carlene. Sorry. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for great conversations with our community here in Rock County. And I look forward to, I mean, already conversations have started, but I mean, in terms of looking at what a map would look like. And just to add on to what was being said, the People's Maps Commission are accepting maps up to the end of June. And I think the more maps, the better. I think, as Matt said, the merrier. And it's really an opportunity to indicate what we, the people down at this level, consider to be a natural grouping or district. So that's all I have to say right now. I think Tia is on, the president of the NAACP.
She was there. Tia.
Yeah, I'm here, Mark.
Hi, Tia. I was just going to ask you, I was thinking, Wanda Sloan had mentioned this, if we're talking about communities of interest, Maple Avenue, for example, that was sort of completely demolished with gentrification, something like that area, or the Merrill community. Are those, natural communities in your eyes?
Yeah, I don't know how. I mean, do the maps get down to that level where you're looking at just neighborhoods?
Well, a little larger than maybe neighborhoods. I mean, they could be extended from there. But one of the things that Moon Bechen, the mathematician, was saying is that really don't restrict yourself to a particular idea of size. I mean, even if we only handed in maps for local neighborhoods, that's something. They can be, superimposed on other maps by that group, the MGG group, MGGG group, to indicate, hotspots of where people are agreeing that are communities of interest common to everybody. So, I mean, we could make as large as, maybe as Carlene was saying, Rock County could be, why divide up Rock County? I mean, we're running into other issues for population division and stuff like that for voting, but I don't think we should restrict our attention to size so much. And what's going to become really important, which I think would be nice to have on record, is the narratives that are going to go behind this. Why do we think that's a neighborhood? Or why do we think that's an organic collection? And so those comments will be going in too. So
Okay.
I really, I really think that there'll also be across the aisle discussions. And that gives me a lot of hope. But so I don't know, maybe Carlene has a better idea of where we should put our efforts in terms of size.
Yeah, I could just show you quickly what districtor looks like and sort of my thinking in my community, and to give you an idea of what it looks like if you'd like to see that. Do you want me to do that?
We don't have tons of time. I kind of want to encourage folks to make sure we have time for Q&A. But whatever.
I think maybe the problem is my AirPods are not picking it.
Well, do you,
Go ahead.
well, maybe go ahead with questions while we're fooling around here.
Yeah, why don't you see if you can get it together? But in the meantime, I just want to open up for questions. If people have them, you can, either just jump right in. I mean, we've had good luck with people doing that, or you can also use the chat if you're feeling shy or would rather ask questions that way. So questions for Carlene or Mark?
Yeah, I have one.
Go for it.
I saw something on the major networks, just a little blurb about the Supreme Court of the United States, and using Wisconsin is in the middle of that because of how bad our redistricting is considered. And do you have any updates on that or what's going on there?
No, John Roberts made it pretty clear that he was not interested in ruling on redistricting in the Rucho case with North Carolina and Maryland. And so that was back in 2019. So he kind of slammed the door on that and said that while this may be really awful, it is not judiciable. That wasn't the word he used, but he just really made it clear that it wasn't something that he was interested in hearing. Now, there may be other ways to get at that through the federal courts based on, small things in specific maps, but we won't be able to take our entire legislative map to the Supreme Court. At least
Thanks.
that's what I've been told.
Other questions? Concern?
I'm just going to share really quickly what districtor looks like so you can see what it looks like and just how simple it is. So this is the website itself. There's all kinds of information. And as I said, they do have Wednesday evening trainings and Thursday afternoon study halls to go and just create maps. But they talk about what each one of these things are. There's training materials that are linked here, registration. But when you get down to the map, you can just click on Wisconsin and it will take you to either drawing districts or drawing communities. And what we've been focusing on is drawing communities. So they use the American Community Survey data. And as I said, I live, and I'm just going to do mine because it'll be faster. But I would strongly suggest that you all do, you know, what you're most familiar with. But for demonstration purposes, it's faster for me to do what I know. So Oregon, Wisconsin, it'll take us into, come on. It'll identify Oregon eventually, I think, usually. Up here, you can see that what I have right now is the hand that moves things around. This one here is for painting, and you can change your brush size. You can add communities so that you can have communities be different colors. You can erase things. You can search for certain things. So again, I'm gonna make this, oops, wrong way, bigger and get to Oregon. And on the data layers, you can show school districts. You can show county boundaries. When you draw, it draws in wards. So I particularly think that the Oregon School District should all be in the same district as much as possible. And I use the yellow for that because I'm going to put other things over it. So I'm going to draw in yellow and it will be the Oregon School District. And so I'm going to just start, you know, it can get really, 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 really tiny. Like I can show you where my house is if you really want to know. But you draw in the whole of the village. Oops, I drew some of the town in there. So I'm going to take that out and go here, move it over some so that I can get the rest. Well, actually, I said I was going to do the school district, didn't I? Never mind. Sorry. The reason why I'm starting with yellow for the larger is because when I put the other over it, you'll be able to see it. And if I start with the darker color, it's hard to see. So trying as much as possible to get as much of the school district as possible into my district, into the area that's in my area of interest, my community of interest. Okay, so it didn't go all the way up into Madison, but this basically represents the Oregon School District, folks that identify with Oregon as their community. And then what I would do is I would write a description. And this is the part that's really important, the qualitative piece. So why do I think that the Oregon School District should all be in the same district? What about it? You know, for me and for the people who live in the district, it is, you know, it's the Friday night football game, it's the concerts, we have a very highly regarded school district, and people identify with the village because they identify with the school district. There's a lot of commonalities around that, and that all goes into this description. The other thing that you can do is to find, you know, identify points of interest. So those might be things like the community center, the senior center, our public library, the Brooklyn State Wildlife Area out here, which is a really beautiful area that people like to go hiking in. You could also identify areas that are of concern. We have a big flooding problem in the village of Oregon. And when you make this larger, you can see Badfish Creek runs out this way. And we cause all kinds of flooding issues for the people who live downstream of us. And we're in 3 different assembly districts. So my assembly district comes right in here and then goes down into Rock County. That's the 43rd. If any of you live in the 43rd, I live in your district as well. But then you can take a different color, and I'm going to go to blue, and I'm going to make my paintbrush much smaller, and I'm just going to color in the village of Oregon, and the wards that are in the village. And then I would write about the village and what it is that makes that why, what's important about the village. And the other things that you can see here as you're doing this is you can look at the population of the area that you have colored in, of the area that's identified versus how the state as a whole. So you can look at all of those variables. Let's see. I'm not able to get my computer to scroll down further so that I can. There are other data layers that you can also look at. Oh, here it is. It's on data layers, not evaluation. So you can show population gradients based total population, white population. So you can see this is a very white area of the state. Hispanic population, not very much, etc. And so there are a lot of variables you can look at. You can also show the partisan lean of the area. We ask that people not start with that, but once you've done it, you can look at it and see what the shaded areas look like based on several different criteria here as far as past elections go. So there's a lot of stuff you can do. And then you go to this spot right here that says save, and save the map. And you tag it PMC for People's Maps Commission. And then I just put in like Oregon because I live in Oregon. Copy this URL, and then you can go back to it. And then you can also submit it to the People's Maps Commission. I'm going to save it as a draft because I'm not done with it, and X out of it. And then there is a site, and I can send it to you with the maps that have been shared. The other thing I just want to show you really quickly, so it makes
Carlene, this stuff's, I mean, actually really amazing. As an urban sociologist, boy, I'd love to have tools like this, but we're running about an hour. So if I could ask you to try to wrap things up, I appreciate it.
Yeah, I just want to show you this one thing that kind of makes it make sense. This is this shows this kind of mapping done when it's been done already. So the darker areas, this is the city of Boston. The darker areas are where there has been the most consensus around areas that should be kept together. So it's one of the reasons why it's important to get a lot of people to submit maps so that it's clear where the areas of consensus are about what shouldn't be broken up, the areas that should be kept together. So I'll stop the share, and I'm happy to do a training or to whatever. And Mark has done it as well. I think, as many people as you can get together or do it on your own. It's actually fun.
Incredible. Yeah, that is pretty amazing. That's just awesome what you can do there. That was a great presentation. It was really clear, and boy, it makes me want to go mess around and have fun with that, if nothing else. Great presentation. I would like to try to wrap things up. If anyone has a burning question, I can entertain something quickly. Otherwise, I will be posting this up on our YouTube channel, Rock County Progressives. So share it widely with everyone, and we got to get the word out.
Chuck?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Go for it, Mark.
No, Maggie.
Aren't there states where the districts are basically grids?
Yeah.
Instead of like communities of interest, they're more like.
So the district maps, the lines for the district maps would not be around these, they would not be lots of different communities of interest. This is just saying, don't split this up when you draw the lines, right? Don't split this community up when you draw the lines. So keep it together in the bigger, so my community is a prime example of one that has these very squiggly lines that come right into the municipality and takes part of it and puts it in one district and part that puts it in another. And it's saying, don't do that. Keep this community together, intact. Don't do those
Yeah,
squiggly lines.
Yeah, I think we understand that. Maggie, if I understood, was just curious if some states use a grid pattern, which is not.
Well, I think like, isn't Iowa's districting like that? Looks like a
More-
grid.
More so.
Yeah,
And I've heard good things about that. People like that.
Iowa is not, it's a good system, but it can't just be picked up and brought over to Wisconsin. Iowa's demographics are very homogeneous when it comes to
Oh.
race and ethnicity,
right.
educational level, population distribution, economic drivers. It's just, we are a much more diverse state with a lot more to consider than Iowa has to consider.
That would make a grid system work better, I would imagine. Makes sense. Any other quick questions?
How long does the training for learning how to use the mapping tools, how long does that training last?
It's an hour. And I'll send you these slides along with a handout that has the registration information and a couple of other things like the fact fiction sheet and things like that, so
I
that
can
you have.
put them out on the email list, but it is important that folks be on that.
Yeah,
So,
I'll send it to Chuck and he can email it on. And then I strongly suggest that you also go to the Fair Maps Coalition. It's fairmapswi.com and sign up to get the newsletter. It comes out once a month, and well, Mark gets the team leaders update once a week, so that's always something you could share, Mark.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Chuck, I also put in the, oh, cool. Thank you, Tia. I put in the chat, there's a contest for drawing your own assembly district. Pierce County is having it, so it's a good way to get practice. Redraw AD 31.
mhm. Should have a contest for the best map.
It is. It is. It
Yeah.
is a contest. $599 for the
Oh, wow.
top prize. Yeah.
Cool.
Well, thanks you all. I really appreciate the time and your interest, and I hope you'll stay engaged in this because we need everybody.
Thanks so much, Carlene. Once
Yeah.
more, give her a big hand. Yay.
Come
Thank
to
you,
the
everybody.
rally on Monday.
And rally on Monday. Yeah. Hope to see you there.
All right.
All right.
Take care. Good night.
Take care,
Thank you.
everyone. Gonna end it now. See you all later.
Good presentation, good meeting.
Yeah.
Ida Wilson.
And next time we have Susan Johnson coming up on the Citizens Climate Lobby and all that good
Yeah.
stuff. So that's
Yep.
next time. See you then. Take care. Bye-bye.
Good meeting.